Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 29th of August 2023, and these are the stories that we will be discussing during the course of the show. We'll begin with the meeting of the SIFC, the 4th Apex Committee meeting that was held of the Special Investment Facilitation Council that was chaired by the Chief of the Army Staff, where the COAS, our General Syed Asim Munir, reaffirmed Pakistan Army's all-out support to the caretaker government for the continuity of policies. This is very important, the whole current context of Pakistan's geo-economic situation, on how it is pertinent that all the institutions be on one front as far as moving forward and taking Pakistan out of all the different crises, all the different situations that it is embroiled in. This is going to be our first segment, the SIFC, Pakistan's economy and the way forward, and how important it is for all the institutions to be on one page. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns a British Pakistani student by the name of Mahanur Chima, who has passed an astonishing number of 34 subjects at the General Certificate of Secondary Education level. She's a 16-year-old girl, but nevertheless, what passion and what results she has shown, and as she has made Pakistan proud, and of course her family proud as well. We are going to talk to her exclusively in this segment to discuss the importance of education and how she came about passing 34 subjects, all with the A grades. Then, ladies and gentlemen, finally we'll be talking about electricity bills. We talked about it yesterday as well, about the situation pertaining to the people's anguish regarding the high electricity bills and how they are in a quandrum on how to pay those. Now, a meeting of the Interim Federal Cabinet that is chaired by Prime Minister Anwarul Kakar is being held in Islamabad, during which the Ministry of Energy's recommendations on the inflated energy bills are going to be considered. And of course, let's see what kind of proposals the Cabinet accepts and finally comes up with, and we'll of course be sharing them as and when they do come along. Let's begin our segment, our first story, and that concerns Pakistan's economy and the efforts of the government to take the country out of all the different issues that the country is embroiled in concerning Pakistan's economy. We all know them, we've talked about them in different shows. One of the important organizations that has been put into place is the SIFC, the Special Investment Facilitation Council, whose 4th Apex Committee was held recently with the Chief of the Army Staff as well as our Prime Minister. How important is this and other important methodologies that the government is taking forward? We'll be talking about that in detail. Before that, let's watch this short report.
Pakistan's economy has faced several challenges in recent times, including climate-induced weather extremes, post-pandemic global economic recession, and commodity price hike following the war in Ukraine. In order to catalyze fast-track development, the Pakistan government, along with institutions, had ensured the establishment of Special Investment Facilitation Council. The SIFC has laid down new rules for ease of doing business for domestic and foreign investors in the country. This remarkable initiative ensures an investor-friendly system that avoids unnecessary delays and provides easy terms and conditions for business. Chief of the Army Staff General Syed Asim Munir has reaffirmed the Pakistan's Army's all-out support to the caretaker government for the continuity of policies in a bid to revive the country's economy and steer Pakistan towards progress and prosperity. The caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Kakar appreciated the efficient functioning of SIFC through a collaborative whole-of-government approach for achieving horizontal and vertical synergy. The Apex Committee appreciated SIFC's outreach strategy to achieve global traction and ongoing engagement with the brotherly and friendly countries, including productive visits of the high-level delegations from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Islamic Organization for Food Security. The caretaker government, in collaboration with institutions, is displaying its resolve and support in maintaining the positive trajectory towards revival of the country's economy.
Revival of the country's economies is on everybody's mind, including the government, including the army, and including all the important stakeholders. We've been joined in the studios by Dr. Abbas, Moosvi Research Fellow at PIDE. Thank you very much, Dr. Abbas, to have joined us. It's your first time here, so welcome to Newsroom. Dr. Abbas, when you look at the different issues that Pakistan's economy is facing, and in the background of all of that, we see the organization of institutions such as the SIFC, the different efforts that the government are putting forward. How important is an institution such as the SIFC, other methodologies that the government is employing to revive our economy? Are they going to be short-term results? Are they going to be long-term results? What is your estimate?
I think it's a great thing that institutions like the SIFC have been set up, and I think it's very important for all stakeholders in an economy to be on the same page. It's a necessary but although insufficient condition for the economy to move forward. I think if we want to pursue long-term institutional reform that is going to move our economy towards inclusive development, we have to also at the same time look at other sort of sectors in the economy, which I think are about 4 or 5 key domains, which include land relations, which include things like the energy sector, the industrial sector, social protection is among them, keeping into consideration the inflation rate, which is quite a runaway inflation rate. It's quite a concerning sort of situation for our middle class. We see a shrinking middle class over the past year or so, and rampant poverty rates. So I think it's important for agencies to be set up, but we have sort of seen agencies set up over the past few years. It's important to look at the approach that they're taking. I think.
And what is the approach that they have been taking?
The approach generally has been, in Pakistan at least, and across the world really, because this is obviously tied, especially in the post-colonial world, to the influence of international financial institutions like the IMF, which we have recently begun our 23rd program with. Now these prescriptions that they assign us are always going to be short-term prescriptions. They're not going to lead to sustainable development over the long run, because they are structured as a firefighting mechanism, right? If you want to move towards inclusive development, you have to look into industrial policy. If you look at countries like Japan or South Korea or Taiwan, for instance, they all had a very well thought out industrial policy where they had what is known as an infant industries model, where the government was heavily involved in monitoring the businesses, the industries that are performing well and rewarding them, and penalizing those that weren't performing well, right? And that is known as the infant industries model, because it creates the incentives for every business, every firm, every industry, whether it's large scale or medium enterprise. It creates the incentive for them to continually improve their operations and move towards efficiency in terms of resource allocations, right? At the same time, if, there seems to be this narrative in Pakistan, at least today, that we can sort of skip past the manufacturing development of the economy. Now, this is something that I think is a gravely mistaken idea. We've never seen the success of this anywhere in the world. You move from the agriculture sector to the manufacturing sector, and it's only then that you can move to the tertiary sector. Now, we never really sort of worked in a considerable sort of way on our manufacturing sector. One of the reasons for that, if you look at a country like India, our neighbor, following independence, they had a very comprehensive land reform initiative, which functioned to not only boost agricultural productivity, but it also corrected the perverse incentives of the colonial times, right? And so when you have higher agricultural productivity, you have more inputs for the manufacturing sector. And when you have more inputs for the manufacturing sector, you have more productivity in the manufacturing sector, more output, which can then be exported.
So basically, it's a step-by-step phenomenon.
It's a step-by-step phenomenon. And another thing that I'd like to mention over here, I think it's an important point. This impression that expertise alone is going to resolve our problems, I think is a mistaken idea. Because we have experts who have been working on Pakistan's economy for a long time. But I think the fundamental issue is the perverse nature of our institutional arrangements. There's this great report that was led by Dr. Hafiz Pasha, which is, he's one of the most famous and accomplished economists in Pakistan today. It was a UNDP report which came out in 2020. Which basically made the case that about 2.7 trillion rupees are actually extracted from the Pakistani economy on an annual basis. Now this amounts to about 11 to 12 billion US dollars. And here we are sort of negotiating with the IMF for $1.3 billion and so on. So I think there's a lot of extraction that is currently happening. And the way this happens is through the elite capture of key institutions, right? You have things like preferential access, you have special privileges being granted to unproductive industries, right? And the reason for that is because it's a very close collaboration between the elites that are functioning in all of these key domains in society. And I think that really needs to be looked into.
All right, Dr. Abbas, you know, you talk about extraction and then you talk about inclusive development. When you look at both of these important things side by side, whose responsibility does it become to take Pakistan out of this quandary? Is it the responsibility of the government? Is it the responsibility of the people? Is it the responsibility of the elite or the heads of important organizations? Is it the responsibility of organizations such as the SIFC? Or is it a mechanism that involves all the stakeholders?
I mean, naturally, it will have to involve all the stakeholders. I think one of the reasons why we aren't able to develop as an economy, as a society even, is because we never really pursued democratization in its true essence since our independence. And democratization doesn't just mean holding elections. It means you have a democratic process through which society is run. You have a free media sector. You have a free and very vibrant civil society. You have things like trade unions within industries, which India was very much in favor of, especially during their takeoff stages. You have things like arts and culture, for instance. So I think all of these things need to be taken into account because the heads of key institutions will only have an incentive to perform if they know that that performance is going to lead to a higher probability of coming into power for subsequent terms. If they don't have that incentive, and if they're reporting to certain elites that have captured institutions, then that's not really ever going to lead to sustainable progress over the long run. It might lead to short-term solutions and so on, but you can never have an ongoing sort of system in place.
You talk of incentives, Abbas. What kind of incentives can we give to the foreign investors, to the countries that invest billions and billions of dollars in other developing countries, so that they can invest more, so that we can also give them investor confidence? Which are the sectors in which we should ask for the investment or attract the investment, and B, how can we attract that investment in a more timely and in a more lucrative manner?
I think foreign investment is always going to be downstream local investment. It's only after domestic players begin to invest in the economy, which they're not currently doing, they sort of they have a much more heightened focus on domains like the real estate sector, which they know are going to guarantee returns without really too much work that has to be done. They'll just buy plots and files and they'll hold on to them for a few months and they'll just sell them off. Now this is a big problem, right? Because the way the economy functions is that you have to have inputs into the economy which constitute both labor and raw materials. If you can't, if there's no sort of structural analysis of how to incubate these domains, then it's never really going to lead to a situation where it's going to signal to foreign investors that this is a lucrative investment that they can make, right? So that's my answer to that question. I think it has to begin at a local level, and knowledge production is very much related to this. Now, I work for a think tank. It's the Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. I am in academia. My work is all based on academia. I think one of the key issues within academia today is that we haven't really looked into how we can come up with innovative solutions, right? It's all very much based on a textbook approach, like the SIFC and other institutions and so on. It's just the first step, right? There's so much more that needs to happen. Getting rid of regulations.
And how do you make that junction? How do you make that connection between the first and the second and the third step, so that things do not stay stagnant at one level and move towards the second?
Yes, exactly. Because we have to look into like how the entire system is operating. Everything is linked to one another, right? There are no standalone domains of activity in any commercial enterprise or in any economy. Right? So if you look at, for instance, education is a very important part of this, right? Now, what India did following independence was they set up a very extensive, large network of the Indian Institute of Technology, and the IT exports from India today are one of the greatest in the world, right? And that is no coincidence, because the state actually invested in those facilities. They invested in the faculty, in the infrastructure. It was a depoliticized kind of approach within the institutions itself, within education institutions. And that is fundamentally what led to their growth and development over time. They had a large sort of pool of labor that was not only educated, but they were very competent. They were very much competitive with the world in terms of their skill sets, in terms of what they were bringing to the table, in terms of their entrepreneurial orientations and so on. And that is all something that the state has to invest in if they want to move forward.
All right, you talk of orientation. What kind of orientation does our business industry, do organizations such as the SIFC need to have in order to have to move more robustly towards a stable economy?
Right. I think one of the key players in this entire ecosystem is the financial sector. Right. Now, our financial sector, following the 90s or so, 1992 onwards and so on, it moved into a direction where credit was largely directed to low-risk areas rather than the small and medium enterprises, for instance, or individual-level entrepreneurs who might have an innovative idea and so on. They moved away from that and they moved towards risk-free investments with government bonds and so on and so forth. Right. Now, if the SIFC is to serve a function in a meaningful manner, the financial sector's incentives have to be looked at.
For example, the mineral summit that happened was something that was quite interesting, and I think that could prove to be very lucrative in the months to come.
Of course, but if we don't look at how the power arrangements are structured within these domains, then it always leads to the risk of resources being appropriated by whoever happens to be the authority in those domains. And we have a lot of resources, we have a lot of capabilities. I believe we have a very talented population. We're going to have Mahanur Chima soon. A great example of the kind of talent that exists in Pakistan. We need to incubate this talent. We need to support it. We need to encourage it.
But we also need to support it in a manner that is that can sustain their lifestyle.
Exactly, for sure, 100%. And these things have to be taken seriously. Society shouldn't be looked at as passive sort of spectators, right? They should be looked at as individuals who can contribute, who can participate, who can take leading roles, who can contribute to the generation of innovative ideas that, that can help our economy grow in a long-term sort of sustainable manner, right? Not just as a short-term sort of makeshift arrangement just for like 6 months or so, and then people forget about it and so on.
Abbas, a lot of talk is being made, I'm sure, at your organization as well, to make Pakistan into a premier foreign investment destination. What should be the strategy?
I think the strategy obviously should be to look into, first of all, rule of law, right? Rule of law is very important. It must be consistent across the board. It has to apply to everybody, including businesses, large businesses. It has to apply to the landed sort of elites and so on and so forth, right? Tax reform is a very important part of this. The structure of our taxes today is very much based on indirect taxation, which are regressive in nature. Their burdens are more so sort of, they go towards the most vulnerable in society, right? And that's because it's based on, let's say, the prices of goods and services. You have a tax on those, you have taxes on income and so on and so forth. The alternative to this could be something like a wealth tax or something like a land tax, for instance, and that is also going to address the perverse incentives within the real estate domain.
Is there any model that you've studied that could be emulated in Pakistan?
I think there are a lot of very good models across the world. China comes to mind immediately. However, every situation is different, every context is different, and every society has its own needs, its own desires, its own historical trajectories, its own culture, its own tradition. And I think sort of just importing a certain model without really looking into whether it would work in our context is a failing strategy. One of the reasons why China was so successful over the past 50 years or so is because they didn't really base their approach on a certain model. They looked into what their societal needs were, and they had a sort of, we'll look at one thing at a time. We'll try to do our best.
Speaking of models, we were the architects of the 5-year plan.
Yes.
Other countries emulated our models, such as South Korea, and look where they are right now.
Exactly.
Should we look back at those models, maybe incorporate them?
Yes, of course. I think 5-year plans are very important because you have to look into like long-term developmental trajectories. However, if our institutions are going to have the capacity to generate 5-year plans that are actually conducive to growth, then they have to be populated by competent individuals. And they're only going to be populated by competent individuals if you have leaders within those domains that are responding to the needs and interests of society, not just for the next year or for the next 2 years, but for the long haul.
All right.
And that's very important, and democratization, again, I'll emphasize, very important over here.
But I think that there are many different steps,
Ji.
and the Pakistani government seems to be moving in the right direction with the
Right.
creation of organizations such as the SIFC and the
Sure.
way that is moving as well. Let's hope and let's have that incentive to move forward together as one to take the country out of whichever crisis it is in, including the economic issues that Pakistan is in. Thank you so very much, Dr. Abbas Moosvi,
Thank you.
Research Fellow
Appreciate
at PIDE, to have joined us, to have come to the studio for the first time. Hope to see you much more in the future as well.
Thank you so much.
Let's come to our second story, and that concerns Mahanur Chima. Our first guest also alluded to him, and we also introduced her. She is online with us, and we all know that she has passed an astonishing total of 34 subjects in the GCSE, that is the General Certificate of Secondary Education. Mahanur, congratulations. First of all, you've made us in Pakistan proud. You've made your family proud. First of all, when you were studying, did it ever come to your mind that the basic aim is to get A's, the basic aim is to get outstanding results? What was the aim when you were, when you thought that these are the subjects that I want to follow?
I've always been very academically driven, so I did always have a plan to do something extraordinary in my GCSEs. So I had planned to originally do 50 actually, but because of several hurdles posed in my way due to the school and council, I had to drop many subjects, and I settled on 34 eventually.
All right. Why choose 34 subjects, 17 plus 17? What was the drive behind it all? Why you also talked about 50, you wanted to go for 50 subjects, but you had to ultimately choose for 34. What drives you to go for so much, and what is the basic, inclination behind it?
As I said, I'd always wanted to do something extraordinary in my GCSEs because it was my first big academic milestone. But other than that, I've always just had a great passion for knowledge, and I've always wanted to absorb as much about the world as I could and be a global citizen. So my subjects really just chose themselves.
All right. Which are the subjects that you are really passionate about amongst all these 34 subjects that you've aced in?
Sciences, because I want to pursue medicine. That's my biggest passion in the future. Languages, because I love like classical and also modern foreign languages. And I would say maths, because my mother is a master's economics holder, so maths has always been big in our family.
All right. Your dream is to go to Oxford University. Why the Oxford? Why not any other institution?
I wouldn't say I have my sights set on one particular university. I'm looking at all the UK and USA top unis, but Oxford has a great medical program, and I think it meets all my requirements, what I want to pursue in the future. So.
Manu, one thing comes to everybody's mind, any youngster who's your age, a girl or a boy, how do you do what you do? What is the basic drive behind it all, apart from the inclination to excel in something? What is the other, what drives you as a student to learn so much? What is the curiosity value that you have? What is the passion that you have inside you?
So I, as a child, lived with my grandmother and my parents, and my grandmother has always instilled a passion for education in our family. She has always said that education can pull you out of any corner and it can push you to new heights. So even as a child, I had always wanted to excel in my education, and that's really my main motivation for doing what I do. My mother and my parents have really picked up the torch from there, and they've instilled in me a drive to do something for the world and serve the world with my talents, and that's my motivation, to put my talents to good use and make a change in the world.
All right. You talked about your parents and how they've instilled values in you. What about the teachers? How instrumental have they been for you?
I would say that there are several teachers throughout my life who I've studied from, and they've shaped critically the way that I think. But teachers in general as a whole, I would say that at my previous school especially, I've had quite a few conflicts, because obviously they have to stick to what the rules state, and the rules state that 10 really is the maximum subjects that you can pursue in school. So I've never had a great level of communication and understanding with them.
Already, you're also pursuing a music diploma, if I'm not wrong. What drives you towards music?
Because I have such a passion for education, I've always wanted to obviously be a balanced person. And music and the arts is something that allows you to express yourself so creatively and beautifully. It really touches a person's soul. My parents have, ever since I was little, my mother used to put on nursery rhymes, classical music, rock, jazz, pop, and I've had a love for these genres of music since I was a child.
Uh, Understanding and grasping the English language is also not something that everybody can do, but you have aced that as well. You have also been shortlisted in the prestigious John Locke essay competition. How driven are you for that?
I was very excited to hear that I was shortlisted. I would say that doing so many subjects has really developed my critical analysis of pieces of writing, and that's what's allowed me to write as well as I do and express myself as articulately as I can.
Let you talk about your passion for medicine. When you ask a youngster, what you want to pursue, it's either medicine or engineering or sometimes business or economy. We have an economist in the studios with us who's listening to you as we speak. Why medicine?
I wouldn't say that I'm the cliche type of student where the Asian parents have said that you must do medicine or you must do engineering. It's really a love of my own.
But here it's very cliched, either you become a doctor or you become an engineer. That's very cliched. Now the IT and the business studies have entered the realm, but a few years back it was just either you had to become a doctor or an engineer.
Yeah, so my passion for medicine is really something that has truly come from myself and not my parents putting that into me. I've seen a lot of illness, unfortunately, in my family, and many of my close family members have passed away due to cancer, diabetes, and something like that. Seeing how that illness can really cripple a family, it really incites a person to do something to prevent that and make that positive change in the world that you want to see.
All right, when I am a doctor as well, so I wanted to understand what do you want to eventually do once you finished your medical studies. I wanted to become either a pediatrician or I wanted to enter a cosmetic surgery. What do you want to do?
I'm currently narrowing it down between neurology, cardiology, or oncology.
All right, that's interesting. Looking at all the other students around you in Pakistan or in the United Kingdom where you are currently, what is the first question that youngsters your age ask you?
They ask me, why do you do so much when it's not the requirement? You can easily get into a top uni with 10 subjects as everybody else does. And my answer to that is always that I don't do these subjects because necessarily I wanted a record. I really do it for these subjects themselves. I love learning and I love all the subjects that I've chosen and studied so far.
All right, Mahnoor, for a layman, for a normal student, girl or boy your age, what would you prescribe him or her? What is the perfect ingredient to be passionate towards any subject that you want to learn or want to get involved in?
I think that if you have a love for the subject, your talent in that subject comes naturally, and naturally you tend to be good at things you enjoy. So I would just say that don't choose subjects that you don't enjoy because you will be miserable studying them. Always choose things that you are genuinely passionate about. And if you don't have a passion for a subject and you still want to pursue it, I would say develop that passion.
Or when it comes to examinations, and of course you've aced them, how should one encounter exams? How should one, go through the examination process with a clear mindset, with a clear head, understanding how to go towards it in a way that can make you a leader?
I would say that for the examinations themselves, put away your phone and all other distractions for the month of the exams. Focus only on your subjects. Put away all extra issues you might have outside of your studies and commit to them entirely. In terms of being a leader, I would say that the qualities that exams develop in you are really things that leaders need to have. Things like analysis, things like being able to judge by yourself instead of being fed information by other people.
All right, Manu, when you look at the subjects that you have aced in physics, chemistry, biology, maths, economics, sociology, psychology, English literature, Latin, German, French, classic civilization, history, film studies and drama, this is quite a diverse set of subjects that you have aced in. Is there a particular methodology to go through them in a way that you can ace them and at the same time be passionate about them?
As I said, I always choose only the subjects in which I have a genuine passion, and I know that I will be able to do well because I enjoy studying those subjects. And the diversity factor comes from the fact that the British curriculum limits you to 10 subjects, and I find that to be very restrictive for my various interests. And I wanted to always be a global citizen, so all these subjects came to me naturally.
The British education system, when people from the British education system ask you why choose 34, why even go for 50 subjects and narrow it down to 34, what's your answer apart from the fact that you want to be a global citizen? But is there something else that also is simultaneously pushing you towards learning, towards achieving more?
I think that I've known from an early age that I had a talent. And I've known that I was different to other children from an early age. And I knew that this talent could be used in two ways. It could be used and it could not be used. So if it was not used, it would have been dormant, and eventually I would have been at the same level that everybody else in my age is at. But I wanted to hone my talents and eventually increase them and bring them to a stage where I was doing stuff not just for myself, but for the world. And that's really, I didn't want to be a person who had so much potential but didn't use it and only did 10 subjects. I wanted to explore my potential, and that's why I did so many.
But Mahanur, once you narrow it down to medicine and go forward, what will happen to all the other passions that you have? Will you continue to study them on the sidelines?
Definitely. I don't want to drop music at any part of my life. I will always play the piano, listen to music, pursue diplomas as they keep coming. I will always have a love for sport, for swimming, horse riding. I don't think that you need to compromise on your other passions as you go forward in life.
On a personal note, your father is a lawyer, mother is an educationist, and you want to pursue medicine. This is a very different field from all. Didn't any one of your parents ask you why not pursue education, why not pursue law?
My parents have never restricted me to the careers that they've followed. They've always been very supportive of what I've wanted to do. And they've always said that if I chose a field that I knew I could excel in and I could do something positive, I could bring a change to the world, then they were fine with anything I chose.
Coming from a background as you have, looking at the perfect track that you have made for yourself, what kind of message would you like to give to students in the UK, students across the world? You consider yourself a global citizen, students in Pakistan. What is the methodology that one needs to apply in order to excel in whatever one likes?
I think to excel, you need to have dedication. You cannot excel if you simply have a passion and do nothing with that passion. To excel, you need to set your mind to a target and then do everything in your power to achieve that target, not rest until that target's been achieved. I think it doesn't matter, to some extent, obviously your resources affect what you can achieve, but it doesn't matter where you come from or what country you're studying from. You can make a change in the world if you want to.
That is so true. I think the change in the world it all begins in the head, and then you move forward with the passion or the zeal that you have, just like you yourself have had. Talking to so many media representatives like myself, like others in the past as well, does fame to get to one's head?
I definitely have not let the fame get to my head. I'm very excited to get back to my studies, to be honest with you. I think that fame can be something that can be positive if you use your platform to do good and propel forward good messages. But fame can also be very negative, and I think it's important to keep the media part of your life and the other part of your life very distinct.
Now, the next question is for the educationists. Your mother belongs to that sector as well. Understanding and having the zeal and the passion to have pursued so many different subjects and have mastered all of them, what kind of an education system, in your point of view, is ideal for good growth of any young boy or girl?
I think it's definitely important to give everybody opportunities according to their talents and abilities. I think often what educationists, teachers forget to understand or forget to take into account is the fact that not everybody is at one level. You cannot prescribe the same teaching method to every person. So I think in the British education system, there are sets, and that is a very useful thing. You should separate children according to ability levels and teach them according to their ability rather than keeping people who perhaps fall behind with the rest or keeping people who perhaps excel with everybody else as well.
You talk of abilities, let's talk about honing of the abilities. Don't you feel there should be more of a prerequisite for any boy or a girl before he or she enters a certain field, whether he or she is can excel in that field or not? Shouldn't there be some kind of an examination process that leads to it? A lot of countries have that, the United Kingdom has that. Shouldn't other developing countries also follow with the same process?
Yes, definitely. I think that, especially in developing countries, there is a really big mindset of do whatever job will get you the most pay. And I think that mindset really needs to change, and you need to do whatever job you will do best in and you will serve your country best in. So it needs to step away from being about economics, and it needs to be about your talents and your abilities. So I definitely think there should be an examination that should tell every person about their aptitude and what field they would do best in.
All right, another question that is very personal. Now you're 16, I mean, you have so many formative years to go and to look forward to, and so many things that you can achieve. Who knows, you might, excel in medicine and I don't know, do what in the future. Is there any other goal apart from excelling in a certain specialty? Do you want to, for example, enter the public domain? We've seen Malala Yousafzai, who's a Nobel laureate. Do you aim to kind of go towards that sector also in due time?
I currently am going to focus on my education, and beyond that, I'm going to focus on my MBBS and achieving my medicine qualification. But I think that a public domain it's not a bad thing to have, as long as I know I will keep it separate from my education and not be distracted by things that come up in my way, stick to my targets.
But as you yourself have said, you're going to pursue music, you're going to pursue other passions that you have side by side with medicine. Who knows, in another 10 years' time, we might be talking to an MP or a person belonging to the United Nations who is a British Pakistani by the name of Mahnoor Cheema, who at one time, at the age of 16, excelled in 34 subjects. We wish you all the very best, Mahnoor, in all your future endeavors. We stand behind you and we are so proud of you. And we will, of course, be following all your endeavors in the weeks, in the years, and in the decades to come. We wish you and your family all the very best.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Allah Hafiz. Thank you. Thank you very much. That, ladies and gentlemen, was Mahanur Chima. What a wonderful human being. At the age of 16, she understands what life is all about. At the age of 16, she's excelled in 34 subjects, and she knows what she wants to do in the coming years and in the coming decades. And this is what our drive should be. As youngsters, a lot of us, including myself, don't understand, don't know which path to pursue, how to pursue it, which is the way forward. And this is what we need with our new generation: a clear-headed mind, a drive, a passion, and the will to do something for yourself, for your community, and for your country. Let's come to our last story, ladies and gentlemen. That concerns the issue that we talked about in yesterday's program also, the electricity bills, the inflation in the electricity bills, inflated electricity bills rather, and how a lot of people are perturbed because it goes beyond their means. A meeting of the interim federal cabinet that is chaired by Prime Minister Anwar ul-Haq Kakar Saab was held in Islamabad, during which the Ministry of Energy's recommendations on these inflated bills were considered. Various proposals and recommendations have been presented for providing relief to domestic and commercial power consumers in this cabinet meeting. The Ministry of Power has informed that the exchange rate of rupees 286 against the US dollar was used to determine the base tariff of the current fiscal year, compared to much less for the last financial year. It left the government with no option but to raise the annual rebasing tariff to the tune of rupees 7 per unit. There is also a proposal to collect rupees 2 per unit in the next 6 months period of time of the current fiscal year. There is no possibility, however, of any relief in taxes, including the GST or the withholding tax, at a time when the country, of course, is under the IMF program, because we have to also pursue the conditionalities under the IMF. The federal government has also ascertained the disclosure that average power tariff has gone up by 14 rupees per unit, jacking it up from 35 to 49 through annual rebasing, which the government has collected through electricity bills in the month of August 2023. Let's see what kind of relief can be provided by this current caretaker government to the people who are, of course, under a lot of stress because of the extreme rise in these bills. We will be, of course, highlighting you and detailing all those changes and proposals as and when they are made. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah with news story segments that pertain to you, us and Pakistan. Stay safe and follow the example of Mahanur Chima. Allah Hafiz.